Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. Ed Willis wrote the book, Never Boring. It applies to RinkWide Vancouver this week with host Jeff Paterson, Irf Gaffar, of course, our Canucks reporter who joins us now. How are you?
Never boring. No. Always ugly these days.
Wow.
Ed could probably add a couple of chapters over this past fortnight or so.
Absolutely. He needs a...
new notebook.
Needs to update. Yeah. It needs a re-release at the end of the season.
Yeah.
I know you don't personally invest, so when we ask, are you done with JT Miller, I'm not asking Jeff Paterson, Esquire. I'm asking on behalf of the Vancouver Canucks, do they need to be done with JT Miller stat?
They're certainly playing like the entire team is now waiting for that proverbial shoe to drop. Right? Like they're paralyzed and something has to give here. And yeah, I mean, the defensive effort the other night, and there were others involved. It wasn't just JT Miller, but on the third Kyle Connor goal, I know it's a multiple choice question and people may have trouble remembering. But yes, the third Kyle Connor goal, the breakaway when both Tyler Myers and JT basically were gliding. And then it was a carbon copy on the second goal last night when Besser gets beaten off the sideboards and JT just kind of spins himself into a circle. And again, the body language not great. And then the coach has to have a little chat with him on the bench. And so it's becoming a nightly occurrence. You are starting to think that subtraction or addition by subtraction may be the route to go here, even if it is a less than desirable return. It just doesn't feel like this team can move forward. This organization can move forward in its current state. And oh yeah, the Edmonton Oilers are rolling in on Saturday night. Like the Kings don't blow anybody out. And they were up 3-0 9 minutes into the hockey game. Jets, that's a different story. Now you get the Oil, who, look, when the Canucks were down 3-0 in their game, the Oilers were also down 3-0 in their game in Colorado. And yet McDavid and Draisaitl play 24 minutes. They will that team back to a victory on back-to-back nights at altitude against the Avalanche. And the Canucks just go quietly into the night against the Los Angeles Kings. And so all of a sudden, an Oilers team that's won 4 in a row, 8 of 9 as it comes in here on Saturday. That's what's next for the Vancouver Canucks.
And that critical moment last night where, I mean, if there was ever going to be a push, they get the 3-1 goal from, of course, the captain, who does wonderful. He tried to be McDavid and succeeded in that moment. And then they follow up in the first 18 seconds of the follow-up shift. Spectacular. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, they've got a little jump here. And a bad pinch, and it's over, and it's a 2-on-1, and it's in the back of the net. Like, they honestly, like, you wouldn't believe it if you didn't see it.
Right, and that's why Rick Tocchet completely exasperated again. Like, he's out of answers, it's clear, and yet he's the coach, and his job is to find answers. And but you can just feel the frustration. And I wasn't in the room post-game because I was hosting RinkWide, but as you listen back to the entirety of his availability at the podium, I mean, just oozing this frustration. I can't play just 2 lines, which is essentially the darts being thrown at the top 2 lines of this hockey club. And look, guys, as much as the heat is on JT, and it should be right now, like, don't let Elias Pettersson off the hook here. JT's making the loud mistakes. Elias Pettersson's just doing nothing offensively. The game in Toronto seems like a lifetime ago now. And the other guy is Brock Besser. And quite frankly, that may have been one of his poorest performances as a Vancouver Canuck. And this is a guy that's worn the uniform over 500 times. I've watched him grow up. We've all watched him grow up. I've got nothing but time and respect for Brock Besser, but he's part of the problem here too. Like, a puck went in off his skate the other night in Toronto. That's his only goal in the last 8 games. Like, let's not fool ourselves into thinking that he's sticking out through the entire Leafs team. And last night, he's on the ice for the first couple of goals, loses his spot. He was the odd man out on power play 1. Then, as you talk about Blake, when they have a little bit of juice, he takes a penalty when they're on a power play, and then the Kings score when they have their chance with the man advantage on the ensuing power play there. He was on the ice for 3 of the goals against last night. Didn't have a shot on goal himself. Like, it's a long list for Brock Besser, and I just worry if we're getting close to this point of something's going to give with this management group. We've all been discussing Brock's future here. I think he might be the easy one. If you're just looking for a move to shake things up a little bit, if you're not going to commit to him long term, and it doesn't feel like they're going to, I just wonder if he is the first shoe to drop here.
when the puck drops, and for all their rhetoric, post-game, post-practice, what have you, they don't believe. Like, there's nothing outside of Quinn Hughes. There's nothing in me that makes me think they believe they can win. Like, I think that quick 3-0 lead for the LA Kings proves that. Like, they don't begin the game thinking we can win this hockey game.
And it was funny because one of the comments Tocchet made last night was, I thought we were going to have a good start. I thought we had our skating legs. And 51 seconds in, they gave up the earliest goal that they have all season long. And they've given up a bunch, but that was the earliest that they have fallen behind in a hockey game. And guys, to me, the craziest part of that sequence was it comes off an offensive zone face-off. You've got Miller and Besser and Hughes and Hronek, 4 of the guys, DiGiuseppe the other one. But you got 4 of your guns out there for an offensive zone face-off. And within 5 seconds, it's breakdown, puck in the back of the net. So they're finding ways, getting creative in the ways that they shock you. The game right after Christmas with the 4-1 lead against Seattle. Like I just thought to myself as I sat there and watched that in real time, like it was breathtaking that they had a 4-1 lead that evaporated. I had some of those same feelings last night, 10 minutes into the hockey game. They're down 3-0, and this is the response. This is the bounce back to what happened in Winnipeg at the end of the road trip. So, it's going from bad to worse. And again, with the Oilers coming in, and look, they face the Oilers 2 of their next 3. So just sort of keep that in mind as well. You just wonder, like, when is the worm going to turn? And clearly the Toronto game was an outlier. They caught the Leafs in a little bit of a rut there. They had lost 3 in a row and only scored 3 goals. And so maybe it was just that they caught Toronto on a bad night, whatever. Can't take that win away from them. But when's the next Canucks victory going to come? I think that's a fair question to ask.
Help us out here. A lot of teams did mid-season availability with the GM. Canucks haven't to date. Are they going to? Is it because of this situation that they have gone underground?
Yeah, I don't know their plans. It's not enough for the general manager to sort of handpick one writer and say what he said. And look, he said a lot in that question and answer with Ian McIntyre. But I've been at every practice.
That's the one on New Year's Eve, Jeff?
Yeah.
That was okay.
And look, I've been at every single practice, every game day availability. I was racking my brain. The last time that Patrick Allvin has stepped before cameras and microphones in any sort of unprepared scenario, a scrum or a press conference, was the day after they traded Daniel Sprong, and we sort of cornered him at a practice on the concourse at Rogers Arena. I mean, that was, early November. I think he made a television appearance in one of the intermissions. PJ got him just before Christmas, and IMAC had the question and answer with him. But we just... Jim Rutherford as well. Like, I don't think it's just Allvin, like one or both. And we talked about this on RinkWide, guys. Like, it does have me longing for the days of Brian Burke, and you didn't have to agree with everything that Brian Burke did or said, and I don't think there were many that did. But when things were going sideways, he was famous for stepping up, taking bullets, providing this great distraction, and, like, where's that? Like, management, this management group is choosing to go the other direction and just hide in the bunker.
Exactly. Like, you're going to tell Elias Pettersson to face the music, Patrick Allvin? What about you? Yeah. And Rutherford, one of the things you brought to this organization, particularly in the early days when you were juxtaposed against your predecessor, is you held the market in the palm of your hand. Rapt attention as you spoke, the Straight Talk Express on this, that, and the other thing. You're the president of hockey operations, the lifer in the NHL. You've seen everything, stick-handled all sorts of situations. What about you? Aren't you going to come out and face the music? But, you say Rick Tocchet is playing the hits here and frustrated and out of answers. This is precisely the time when one of his superiors needs to step in, help him out, support him a little bit as you go through these tough times.
Well, I remember when they trotted out Jim Rutherford and he sat there with Francesco Aquilini, and they still didn't have a general manager at that point. And I remember asking Francesco Aquilini, how important is a communicator as the next general manager of the Vancouver Canucks? And he agreed. And basically the premise was, look, at the end, we didn't hear much from Jim Benning either, right? Because he didn't want to have to face a lot of the questions about things and the way they were going for the hockey club. Yeah. It is wild, guys. Like, the end of the Bruce Boudreau era, if we can call it that, came 2 years ago next week.
Yeah.
And it was at the end of a stretch of 2 wins in 12 games. And we all remember the way it played out. And Bruce there on a Saturday against the Edmonton Oilers of all teams, Hockey Night in Canada, patting his chest and a dead man walking. But Bruce Boudreau went down with Spencer Martin and Colin Delia as his 2 goaltenders. And with Luke Shen and Ethan Bear as his second and third best defensemen. Like, you look at the talent on this roster, and we all get that the talent hasn't performed outside of the captain. But this team is better, way better on paper than it was 2 years ago when they made the coaching move. And yet it just looks and feels like we've been dragged back in time 24 months.
I agree with you, Jeff. I see a lot of parallels, but let's not forget the record is better. They're 1 point out of a playoff spot, right? That Boudreau team was dead and buried by
the seventh
if
game.
Not
When they lost the first 7 games, I mean, they were playing catch-up. No, I mean, seriously, they got so far behind the 8 ball early and never caught up. But they also lost Thatcher Demko on December the 1st that year, and they had 2 goaltenders that were not National Hockey League goaltenders. They've got a goaltending tandem right now that would be the envy of a lot of teams. And look, Demko wasn't good enough last night, but I look at the goals individually. Like, I didn't have a huge problem with the goals. My issue is he's got 2 wins in his 9 starts, and that can't be good enough. And so for the people that were, hey, just wait till Thatcher Demko gets back, it's going to turn around. Well, I think it's pretty obvious now that even getting Thatcher Demko back hasn't reversed the fortunes of this hockey club.
Look, it's important to remember all is not lost here. If you want to say that management has waited too long in stick handling the Paterson Miller situation, fair enough. I think that's fair criticism at this point. But you're not out of the playoff race. Proactive is still available to you.
Well,
if you think this group still has a chance to do something in the spring.
Guys, last year in the middle of February, the Canucks had a 13, it might have been 16, but it certainly was 13-point lead in the middle of February on the Edmonton Oilers. And you remember the Oilers made it very close at the end with regards to the division. Like, you can go on a run, but it's just, does this team show any signs of going on a run? As for management,
and that's what I mean, proactive. If you think there's a run in this team, then it's incumbent on you to move now or very soon.
Are they hiding, Jeff, just because they have something at stage 9 of 10 with regards to a deal, and there's no point in talking about the current state because they know the current state is only going to be that for hours or days? That's the only valid excuse that I can come up with.
I have trouble giving them the benefit of the doubt. It's a Canadian market. Yeah. There's a thirst and a hunger to get some answers. The place is burning down right now. Almost every other GM did a mid-season availability. The 41-game mark, it's just an easy time to get out in front and answer some questions about where you've been and where you're going here. I think, to your point about,
Well, and one other thing, Jeff.
Okay.
Just one other thing. And the other thing, Blake, why I don't think they're at stage 9. Aquilini and Rutherford leak.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing been out there in terms of the Canucks being close on anything. Sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
No, this idea that suddenly they're going to catch fire, like, until I see any indication from either JT Miller or Elias Pettersson. They're only going as far as those 2 guys, Besser to a slightly lesser degree. They've had Hronek back now for 2 games, and I'll cut him some slack, but he's not the answer either, apparently. Dakota Joshua is the only body that's missing here. I think it's important, guys. Like, part of the fun of last year, 50 wins and 109 points was great. It all added up to opening the playoffs at home. First and second round. They won the opener of both of those playoff games. That just built the belief and the energy and the excitement. Let me just frame it slightly differently. What if they are the wild card 2 and they have to go into Vegas or Winnipeg and they get their lunch fed to them in the first 2 games and come back home with their tails between their legs? Yes, they've made the playoffs, but where's the buy-in? Where's the walk-up on game day? Where's the clamoring to be part of it all? Like, it is a totally different equation, this idea of just getting into the playoffs. Yes, it beats the alternative, I suppose, because if you just miss out on the playoffs, then you truly are in the mushy middle. You're not getting any kind of draft capital out of all that. But that was something that they just didn't have to go through last year, was coming home off the road down 2-0. And look, I don't know that they'd be down 2-0. I'm just presenting a scenario here. It was a ton of fun last year. Fun is missing from the equation right now, and I just fear that it will remain so the rest of the way. I just don't see the life and spark out of the best players aside from the captain that's required.
And they were the comeback kids. If they were down last year in the third period, you had full confidence you were going to see a push, and so many times they came back and forced games into overtime or won games late, and there's no sign that they're going to do that here.
One last question I wanted to ask you, Jeff. They said goodbye to Mike Yeo. They promoted a young assistant in Yogi. Ian Clark no longer coaches goaltenders because of the status of his knee. They replaced him with a young coach. Are those moves showing up now?
I see that. I can't put the problem.
I know it's hard to pinpoint coaches and the impact of coaching,
but this hockey club at the foot of young.
If Tocchet is lost, he's missing a whole lot of wise counsel that he once had on that bench.
Mike Yeo would have been the most sought-out assistant coach in the National Hockey League in the history of the National Hockey League, if that was the case.
Okay, but what about Ian Clark? Demko's got 2 wins in 9. They made the wrong goaltending call the other day, right? With going Lankinen and Winnipeg.
For sure. I think there's some validity that Ian and Thatcher were in lockstep, obviously. It's a new relationship with Marco Terenius. The one guy that I wonder a little bit about is they let Jeremy Colleton go. And, he's found himself in a pretty prime position with the New Jersey Devils. They're swimming along there. And not that Manny's not doing a decent job down in Abbotsford, but I think that there was some cost saving involved in that one. And if you wanted to make a coaching change, at some point, you had a ready-made National Hockey League guy with experience in Chicago who's going to get another opportunity at some point already in the system. And so I think that, to me, it's more that. Like, Yogi's been around this team. He was the skills coach. He was on the ice at every practice a year ago. Daniel and Henrik are on the ice at just about every practice at the big league level, the minor league. It's not on those guys that the Canucks had 1 shot on goal on 5 power plays last night against the Kings. You're putting your best players out there. Like, again, at some point, like, instinct has to kick in, and you got to figure out a way to get the zone and set up and start zipping it around. And, like, Yogi's not telling them to, screw up in the neutral zone and not shoot pucks. Like, so I get it. I think that everybody's looking for reasons right now. And yes, you're not wrong when you point those out, but I don't know. I'm having trouble believing that the departure of a couple of assistant coaches is ultimately the reason why this team is just toppling right now. To me, it comes right back at the feet of your 2 highest paid forwards that just aren't producing and aren't showing any signs of producing either.
Very fair, but Blake said yesterday it's always a variety of reasons. Right?
For sure.
Like, we can pinpoint and fixate on Elias and JT, and that's correct because they are the biggest part of the problem. But there are other things that are going poorly for this club as well, and a lot of it by their own making.
And Jeff, too, I do wonder too, and this is not detracting from the Miller Paterson story, but I do wonder if Rick undervalues the roster more than he should. Like, nobody's playing very well right now, but the sentiment you brought up earlier of I can only play 2 lines and I can only I can't play 60 minutes of Quinn Hughes. Like,
he was talking about playing 4 fucking lines yesterday morning, and after the game he's talking about playing 2 lines.
Yeah, I don't think the roster is as bad as he makes it out to, particularly on the forward set. Like, I have to believe the game plan that he's trying out, the guardrails that he's put on these players might be handicapping them more than they should be. Maybe they're better than he thinks they are.
Well, and there's a couple of things there. And one is, I was looking at this morning. In the last 20 games, and that's an arbitrary number, but it's half the season, no forward has played more power play time than Connor Garland. Now, Miller and Paterson have both missed some time here. In those 20 games, Connor Garland has 1 power play goal and 1 power play assist. What is his role on the power play, and why is he your leading ice time forward when he's a complete afterthought, not a shooting threat at all? And so, yes, I think deployment, is fair. The other one is, as much attention right now is on Paterson and Miller, and it should be, Like, what's going on with Pia Suter? Where did he go? He's gone 19 games without a goal. He's a better player than that. And so in all these games that have required overtime, that have been tight late in the game, like the difference that a goal from a Pia Suter or a Danton Heinen or a Teddy Bluger or a Phil DiGiuseppe, I know Höglander scored the other night in garbage time, but how about another one for Nils Höglander? So, yes, I tend to agree that there's more talent on this roster, and as the top-end guys have struggled, the support cast has gone ice cold as well, which is a little strange that it's all happened at the same time. And outside of Kiefer Sherwood, like they just get nothing from their depth guys right now, where a goal here or there. I think it's fair to expect more than a goal every 20 games from Pia Suter. Like there was talk the first 20 games, guys. I saw stuff in social about, well, he can't be the unsung hero. He's too valuable. People are talking too much about him, and now he's gone 19 games without a goal. And they were winning games early. How were they winning games early? They were getting a little bit better goaltending, and they were getting goals from Sherwood and Bluger and Suter, and some of these guys were chipping in the early going, and that's disappeared entirely as well. And it sort of disappeared under the cover of, oh yeah, the issues are way higher than the middle of the lineup. And I'm not expecting the middle of the lineup to carry the Canucks, but good teams also get some contributions from the guys a little lower on the depth chart.
Pia Suter at 16 points after the 5-2 win against Columbus on December 6th, and we were all lauding him. I will throw a couple of bones here because I know there are some people who think I haven't been harsh enough on Tocchet. Shout out Matthew's Hairline on Twitter. Pia Suter has two terrific opportunities to score in the first period last night, Blake. And to your point as well, throw you a bone as well. Maybe if he had been in shooting high-quality offensive chance positions a little more under this system, he converts one of those two opportunities. And then on the Garland thing, try is not enough when you're talking about power play deployment. It's not about your 5 best workers on the power play. It's your 5 best offensive players. I've got other people going, oh, you want to give special treatment to Elias Paterson. Special players get special treatment. Talented players get special treatment. This isn't a democracy. It's not youth hockey. It's not your kid's dressing room where everybody should be playing the same amount of time. We distinguish between good players and bad players in myriad of ways in professional sports. And I am wholeheartedly in agreement, guys, that Garland cannot be your top forward power play options. Yeah. I don't care how fucking bad Paterson and Miller are. You just keep trotting them out there until it works.
Well, and just on deployment, guys, like obviously right now JT's in a rut. He admitted that the coach has said as much. Like, who was the one guy that brought a little bit of defensive solidity to the Miller line for much of last season? And it was Pia Suter, right? And so if Pia Suter's not scoring and you don't expect him to score, like, why haven't they gone back there? Like, Phil DiGiuseppe, great story that you have persevered and made it back to the National Hockey League. You're playing a top 6 role on a struggling team right now. Like, bring Atu Ratu up, let him play the middle, Pia Suter moving from the middle of the wing, and maybe we're moving the deck chairs around, but what they're doing right now isn't working. And so just JT Miller shouldn't need a life jacket at this stage of his career. But in the short term, give him one and try and keep his head above water here. And maybe Pia Suter, that's a role that he could step in and help. So, Pia Suter, I don't want to turn this into a big Pia Suter segment, but no. I do think it speaks to deployment right now. And the coach is culpable in all of this as well. It's not just 2 guys. There's plenty to go around with the Vancouver Canucks right now.
No, you're so right on DiGiuseppe. Enough already. No, but like Sassen's level dropped. Sure, it's a young player. There's be ups and downs. Sassen's way better with the puck than Phil DiGiuseppe. You need goals. Play Sassen ahead of DiGiuseppe. Play Ratu ahead of DiGiuseppe.
Yeah.
I almost dropped the do something there, but I believe it's trademarked. Jeff, you have a marvelous weekend. And
we said last question 7 minutes ago.
Well, that's where we are with this hockey.
That's where we are. Yes, exactly.
Blake, when you go into the operating room, it may take 2 hours. It may take 7 hours.
Yeah. We dropped a piece of gauze in the cavity.
Something ruptured in the middle of that. Okay, we're going to be here a little longer. Put on a pot of coffee. RinkWide tomorrow. Should be fun. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, we'll talk to you on Monday.